Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to all. Okay, so today we will discuss on HACCP, Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point. Okay, so before we discuss more on the some of the steps on HACCP, so you need to understand and familiar with some of the important terms. For example, like CCP, okay, which is critical control point, okay, hazard, monitor, preventive measure, okay, and what is corrective action. Okay, and then we did discuss on step in the development of a new HACCP plan. So you need to know some of the steps, okay, in the development of new HACCP plan. Okay, start from following the prerequisite program or foundation program, such as GMP, and then you need to have a team, okay, and then you need to describe product, you need to know the detail, the specification of the product, okay, for instance, pH, the water activity, the ingredient, and you need to identify the intended use, okay. You need to construct a flow diagram. So the flow diagram should cover all the steps in the operation for a specific product. And after that, okay, another process is on-site confirmation of flow diagram. Okay, so step must be taken to confirm the processing operation against the flow diagram during all stages and hours of operation. And we can amend the flow diagram where appropriate. And then after that, we can follow the 7 HACCP principle or HACCP step. Okay, so again, we go to the HACCP. So again, HACCP is a system which identify and we can control the hazard which are significant for food safety. So actually, HACCP is a sign-based, we call as a sign-based preventive system, okay, to ensure food safety, food quality through the hazard analysis and control measure. Okay, so again, hazard concept is a preventive system of control, and HACCP is a very careful analysis of ingredient, okay, of a process. So it's a very careful analysis of ingredient and process to determine those component or area that must be maintained under very strict control to ensure that the end product meet the safety spec that have been developed. Okay class, what is hazard? Okay, hazard is a property which may cause a product to be unsafe for consumption. So as you know, hazard consists of biological, chemical, or physical agent or any condition with the potential to cause harm. Adverse health effect. Okay class, again, what is hazard analysis? So hazard analysis is the identification of a sensitive ingredient, critical process point, and relevant human factor as they affect product safety. And how about the critical control point? So CCP is a step at which control can be applied and food safety hazard can be prevented or can be reduced to an acceptable level. Okay class, we can see from here the history of HACCP. Okay, so start from 1960, sorry. Okay, NASA developed food for the space program using the HACCP system. Okay, and then 1974, okay, introduction to FDA, Food Drug Administration, and USDA start HACCP. Okay, and then 1980 HACCP was recognized and widely applied in, and then start from 1995 HACCP system was mandatory in European countries. Okay, so why HACCP class? Okay, why HACCP system is very important to ensure the safety and quality of food product? Okay, first because HACCP promote safety, and HACCP is a food safety system. Okay, so that give assurance to consumer. So HACCP is an effective system for managing food safety, and it is one of the requirement of Food Act 1983 and Food Hygiene and Regulation. Okay, so HACCP also needed to reduce barrier to international trade. Okay class, you can see from here export market and important countries requirements. Okay, country such as EU. Okay, you can see the regulation from here, and sector require HACCP, for example fish and fishery product. And for New Zealand, okay, regulation Animal Product Act, and sector require HACCP animal product processing business. Okay, so again for implementing HACCP, so we need to practice our prerequisite program, or we call as a foundation program. Okay class, can you name some of the foundation program before we practice HACCP? Okay, some of the example of a foundation program. Okay, hygiene and sanitation control. Okay, so we can practice GMP in the first place. Okay, personal training, product specification, pest control, and then product traceability. And okay, so how does HACCP work? So we must practice 7 HACCP principle. So first of all, it starts with conduct hazard analysis and identify control measure. The second principle is determine the critical control point, CCP. And then establish the critical limit for each CCP. Principle number 4, establish monitoring system for each CCP. And then establish corrective action for any deviation that may occur. And then establish the procedures or protocol for verification. And the last one, establish the record keeping and document. Okay, so we go to the first principle, which is conduct hazard analysis and identify control measure. Okay, so we can identify hazard and assess risk for each hazard in processing the product and their respective preventive measure. Okay, so again, hazard is classified into 3 types. Okay, biological hazard, physical and chemical hazard. You can read from this. Okay, analysis of hazard. Sensitive and non-sensitive ingredient. Okay, so sensitive ingredient is any ingredient, also we call as a raw material, okay, related with a known microbiological hazard. Okay, this include okay, sensitive ingredient include meat and poultry, egg, milk and dairy product, okay, nuts and nuts ingredient. Okay, how about the non-sensitive ingredient? The non-sensitive ingredient include acidified fruits, antioxidant, sugar, salt and chemical preservative. Okay class, we go to the hazard analysis. Okay, hazard analysis is a systematic evaluation of food and its ingredient to determine the risk from biological, physical and chemical hazard. So hazard analysis and risk assessment process require the involvement of technical expert from a variety of discipline, okay, including from the discipline of engineering, from the discipline of toxicology, and from the discipline of microbiology. Okay, second one, determine the critical control point, CCP. Okay, so to identify each CCP in the processing flow where an identified hazard can be controlled. So CCP must be determined in all food production steps. Okay, so class, you can see from here some example of CCP. Okay, for example, you can see from here step in food production. Okay, production of raw material step, processing step, packaging step, distribution step. Okay, so for production of raw material, so we can name some of the CCP critical control point involved. Okay, for instance, use of pesticide, okay, the use of antibiotic. Okay, for the processing, okay, some of the CCP involved, like product formulation, okay, cleaning, retort process. Okay, for the retail or home, okay, CCP, some example of the CCP involved, like storage condition and also cooking procedures. Okay, class, we go to the next one, which is establish a critical limit for each identified CCP. Okay, list aspect as a maximum or minimum of limit for measure taken at the control point. We need to understand from here that critical limit are the boundaries of safety for the factor related with critical control point. Okay, for example, a maximum pH of an acidified beverage. Okay, you can see also from here an initial feel weak and pressure in the can retort product. Okay, and also we can see other type of information frequently utilized for the control limit. Okay, that include time, pH, humidity, preservative, temperature, viscosity, and also salt concentration. Okay, so you can see from here the level of the critical component to become a hazard. Okay, normally the sources of information on the control limit can be obtained from a regulatory guideline, okay, from the survey, from the experimental study, from the expert. Okay, and for the chemical and physical measurement can be used as an indirect measure of microbiological control. Okay, one have to take into consideration the variation related with the equipment, such as the oven temperature variation, to assure the enough cooking of a product. Okay, so for example, the product require a minimum temperature of a 10 degree could not be cooked in an oven with a temperature variation of a 10 degree plus minus 5 degree. Okay, so you can see from here some of the example of the critical limit for different type of hazard. Okay, type of critical limits and also the critical limit. Okay, so from this table you can see a type of CCP is chemical, for example mycotoxin. So critical limit for mycotoxin, for aflatoxin is 10 part per billion. So you can check the critical limit from the food regulation. You can check the critical limit from Codex Alimentarius as a food reference. Okay class, we continue to monitor HCCP critical limit. So monitor HCCP critical limits is the act of conducting a planned sequence of observation or measurement of control parameter to assess whether a HCCP is under control. So monitoring practice is very important in HACCP. Okay, so we go to the purpose of monitoring. So the purpose of monitoring, we can track the operation of the process and enable the identification of trend, and then we can identify when there is a loss of control, whether there is a deviation at a critical control point, and then provide written documentation of the process control system. Okay, so this is a monitoring procedures or monitoring protocol. We can identify who, okay, from the job position. Okay, what is to be monitored, when and how often, where it is monitored, and document. For example, we can monitor the temperature of the chiller frequently. Okay, so it is one example of monitoring. Okay, so effective monitoring is crucial in a HACCP system. Okay, so to the advantages of CCP, the advantages to monitor CCP critical limit, to pinpoint the cause of the problem when control is lost, and then it also can help to prevent or minimize loss of product when a process of handling deviation occurs. Okay, for the monitoring, okay, some example of monitoring activity, okay, like observation, visual observation and measurements. Okay, for instance, visual check for sanitation, okay, and fruit sorting. Okay, so from here we can see that measurements may include physical, chemical, or micro. And the most common process measurement taken are time, pH, temperature. Okay, so this is the point for data collector for monitoring purpose. So the data collector must have the skill and knowledge. Okay, so the data collector must have the skill and knowledge not only to understand the food production process, but also the purpose, the important, and the process of monitoring activity. And the data collector as well should be unbiased, and he or she must have they must have high level of training and experience. Okay, for example, to determine chemical, microbiological. Okay, class. We go to the next step, okay, which is establish the corrective action. Okay, what is corrective action? Corrective action is any action to be taken when the result of monitoring at the HCFP indicate a loss of control. Okay, established corrective action is clearly defined. Corrective action to be taken by an assigned individual when monitoring indicate that there is a deviation from an established critical limit. Monitoring must be able to detect any deviation from specification, loss of control. Okay, and then to provide information in time for corrective action to be taken to regain control of the process before there is need to reject the product. Okay, for example, product chicken burger. So critical control point, cooking. Okay, so HCCP criteria, we need to cook the burger to more than 71 degrees Celsius. Okay, internal temperature. And then the corrective action, if anything happen, we need to continue cooking until 71 degrees Celsius. And you can see another example. Okay, for example, HCCP, pasteurization, and the corrective action for that particular HCCP. Okay, for example, if control is lost, we can activate the flow diversion valve. Okay, so we can go to the corrective action. So the corrective action should include the following. So we need to ensure the HCCP is under control, determine correct the cause of the deviation and restore the safe process control. We can identify the product that was produced and record the corrective action. Okay, handling of non-conforming product. Okay, some action will be taken to prevent the non-conforming product from entering the food chain unless it can be assured that the food safety hazard of concern has been reduced to the defined acceptable level, and the food safety hazard of concern will be reduced to identify acceptable level, and then the product still meet the defined acceptable level of the food safety hazard of concern despite the non-conformity. Okay, you can see from here how to handle of non-conforming product. Okay, so all lots of product related with a non-conformity must be held under control of the organization until they have been evaluated. And then some step taken to deal with the potential unsafe product shall be documented. Okay, and then the most important thing is if product that have left control of the organization subsequently determined to be unsafe, so the organization must initiate a withdrawal. Okay class, you can see from here the evaluation for release. Okay, so each lot of non-conforming product can only be released as safe when any of the following apply. Okay, first of all, other evidence demonstrate that the control measure have been effective. And then sampling, analysis, or any other verification activities demonstrate that the affected product lie with the identified acceptable level for the food safety hazard. And then this is the disposition of non-conforming product, as you can see from here. Okay, following the evaluation, if the lot of product is not acceptable for release, it shall be first reprocessed or further processed to reduce the food safety hazard or reduce the hazard to acceptable level. For example, if some of the food product is not reach the safety limit, we can do these activities, so we can reprocess back the product until it reach, for example, it reach 70 degrees Celsius. Or the last resort, destroy or dispose as well. Okay class, we go to the principle number 6. Establish verification procedures. So, it includes documentation of review of record, verification of monitoring equipment, and confirmation that the HACCP plan is working. Okay, so this step is very important. Include the verification step. So the verification step is carried out to confirm through documentation that the HACCP plan is followed and outlined. It also provides assurance the HACCP program is achieving the established objective of food safety. So verification step, okay, some step in verification include, for example, a review of the HACCP plan, okay, compliant with the established CCP, okay, confirmation of compliance with the procedures for handling of deviation and record, and then other steps like a visual inspection of the operation while a product is in production, and a written report. Okay, class, we go to the last step or last principle. Okay, so the last principle is establish effective documentation and record keeping system. Okay, so it is include document all the monitoring activities. For example, corrective action taken. We can record. Okay, so we can see from here. Okay, type of HACCP record, including CCP. Monitoring activity record, okay, record associated with establishing a critical limit, and then record associated with deviation and corrective action, and verification record. So HACCP record should be kept separate from the quality assurance document. Okay, again class, this is some of the advantages of using HACCP. Okay, so first of all, it's very easy to use and understand. HACCP system focus resources and critical area, and also HACCP system give customer confidence in the safety of the operation, can be used at all stages of the food chain, more effective than traditional inspection, and complementary to QMS, okay, quality management system. Okay, that's all for today class. Thanks for listening.